How's it going today, guys? Once again, TP3 back here for another episode of Hot Takes with TP3, but today it's a little different. It's just me in the studio. I had to come to y'all especially for a little NBA trade deadline action. Now, this is one of my favorite days of the year personally. I don't know about y'all, but we've seen lots of big moves in the past on NBA trade deadline, but I would definitely say this is one of the most exciting deadlines yet, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So before I get into winners and losers and surprises and buyouts and stuff like that, I got a little something for y'all. I'm going to read off all the trades, and also coming later in the show at the end in honor of Duke and North Carolina tonight, I want to give y'all my top 5 best rivalries of all time. No bias, because obviously bias-wise, I'm going to say like Florida State, Florida, or like a Hawks rivalry or Falcons, Saints or something like that. So I'm going to give y'all my non-biased best rivalries in sports here at the end, but for now, let's get down to the trade. So a pretty hectic day. We saw a couple minuscule trades earlier in the week. I mean, obviously Blake Griffin coming last week was pretty big, but start the day off, I'm on my way to class, and I get a notification. Cavs get Jordan Clarkson and forward Larry Nance from the Lakers. I was like, oh, I wonder what they gave up. Probably not much of anything. Then about 2 minutes later, I get a notification, send Isaiah Thomas, Channing Frye, and the Cavs first-round pick. So for a second, I just saw first-round pick, so I thought it was a Brooklyn pick, and I was like, what are you doing, Cleveland? But they did send Isaiah and Channing Frye, and I mean, looking at that trade at first, I was freaking out. I was like, what's going on here? The Cavs just blew their whole team up. But then I get the notification of the second trade, and I saw the Cavs got George Hill, Rodney Hood. The Jazz got Jay Crowder and Derrick Rose, and the Kings get Joe Johnson and Mon Shumpert. So big-time 3-team deal. I'll hold off for a minute and give you all my thoughts on it here in a sec, but let's just keep moving down the list. So then the next trade the Cavs make was even more shocking, sending D-Wade to the Heat and getting only a second-round pick in return. And that was the end of big moves today for the Cavs. So then we keep going down. We got the Heat making another move. They acquire forward Luke Babbitt from the Hawks for an old Noel, Akara White. Love seeing that. Then we got another deal with the Pistons and the Grizzlies. The Pistons acquire forward James White, and they send Bryce Johnson and a second-round pick. Not a bad move there. Then the Pistons made another move, this time with the Bulls, where they get Jameer Nelson, send Willie Reed. Then we got the Raptors and the Kings making a little deal where the Raptors get Malachi Richardson and they send Bruno Caboclo. I don't really know how to pronounce his name. Never heard of him before, but apologize, Bruno. Then we had another 3-team deal that was pretty big today where you got the Knicks getting Emmanuel Mudiay. The Nuggets get Devin Harris and a second-round pick, which is from New York, and the Mavs got Doug McDermott. And then we got another Bulls deal, this time with them and the Blazers, and you have Milutin Rakanovic. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name either. I apologize, Milutin, if I mispronounce your name. And then we got the Bulls receiving Noah Vonleh and some cash. So, I mean, we knew the Blazers had to move him, and they moved him. Then we got the Nets and the Pelicans striking a little deal here. The Nets get Dante Cunningham, and Pelicans get Rashad Vaughn, trying to throw a little shooting in there and a little guard play. And then we got a deal here that caught my eye a little bit more than the other past couple I've read, and that's the Suns and the Magic striking a deal here. Elfrid Payton for a second-round pick. So, I mean, that means Orlando really is giving up on Elfrid Payton. Then last but not least, we got the Wizards making a deal with the Hawks where they get future cash considerations and the Hawks get Shelvin Max. So once again, nothing big there. So now let's look at some winners and losers from this trade deadline. And the first team we got to talk about here, obviously, is the Cavs. And I actually have the Cavs as a winner from the trade deadline. And so the Cavs are a winner to me. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like I said earlier, when I saw this Isaiah Thomas to the Lakers trade, I was like, what is going on, Cleveland? Why would you give up your future first-round pick, Isaiah Thomas, and Channing Frye, and only in return get Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance? I mean, that just doesn't seem like a very good trade to me. But then they turn around and pull off that blockbuster that allowed them, the 3-team blockbuster that allowed them to get George Hill and Rodney Hood. And so honestly, at first, I was really thinking this was not a great trade at all for Cleveland, even when they got Rodney Hood and George Hill. But now that I've had some time to sit on it and let it marinate a little bit, I've thought about it more, and I think it's actually a good trade for Cleveland. So you got to look at it from this perspective. The Cavs dump some salary with some players they don't want, like Amon Shumpert. I like Jay Crowder, but I don't know if he's really got a future there in Cleveland. And then you also get rid of Isaiah Thomas. And basically what I take away from the Isaiah Thomas trade is that I know we hear all this talk out of the Cavs locker room about the players arguing or Isaiah Thomas calling people out or LeBron wanting trades. I mean, you're never going to get a straight up explanation of what's happening there, and you're never going to get a truthful explanation of what's going on out of there. So my take on it personally is that Isaiah Thomas is a locker room problem, and he was causing a lot of problems in their locker room. And I think guys like Jay Crowder, who played with him in Boston, was probably siding with him, and also other players were beefing. Like Shumpert was probably causing locker room problems, and the Cavs just knew that it was not working out, and they had to fix something in their locker room. So what they did was actually do a minor rebuild while still putting some pieces around LeBron, and they acquired some good young assets. Like Rodney Hood's a good young player. I mean, Larry Nance, good young player. Jordan Clarkson, good young player. So it's kind of like a mini rebuild while at the same time you fix some things on your roster. George Hill's a quality older point guard who can knock down some shots for you. He can play a little bit. He had a good season last year, and I really like him running things for Cleveland. Now, we all know LeBron obviously would be the one running the offense, but if you look at it, you probably got a starting lineup of George Hill, J.R. Smith, LeBron, Kevin Love, and Tristan Thompson. Then your backup point guard is Jordan Clarkson, not a bad sixth man. You got Rodney Hood also as a sixth man at shooting guard, and Korver off the bench at shooting guard. Then you got Jeff Green and Cedi Osman as your backup small forwards, and you got Larry Nance coming off the bench at power forward. Now, I will say this, they still don't really have a rim protector, which bothers me a lot. I saw they were trying to sign Tristan Thompson to a deal, so not a bad move if you're Cleveland to go younger here and keep that Brooklyn pick. That's huge that they kept the Brooklyn pick, so they still have a future next season, but they definitely got a better roster. Now, do I think they can beat the Warriors with this roster? Absolutely not. There is no way they can beat the Warriors. The race is going to come down to Warriors, Thunder, and Rockets out west. I don't think the Cavs, Celtics, or Raptors can beat them. I think the Cavs with this lineup can get past the Raptors, and I think them versus the Celtics is going to be tough. I mean, we really have to see how they play together. I can't make a call yet on that, but gun to my head, my call on that is I'm taking the Cavs over the Celtics just because they still have LeBron James, and it's the best player on the planet, the baddest man on the planet, and I just think he's enough still to get them past the Celtics. But if Gordon Hayward's back playing and is actually like doing stuff, then I don't know, Cleveland, what's going to happen there. But I think you got a better roster now. You got rid of some of your locker room problems. And the next team I want to talk about is the Lakers. So the Lakers are a huge winner for me too. And the reason why I say they're a huge winner is because they bring in a guy like Isaiah Thomas. Now, Isaiah Thomas, yes, he was causing locker room problems most in Cleveland, and he definitely can't play defense, so that's a big thing for the Cavs to get rid of that non-defense. But it's not Isaiah's fault. It's not like you can have a 5'10 ball-dominant player who plays both ends. I mean, that just doesn't happen, and Isaiah Thomas gets banged up and hurt more if he's playing a lot more defense. But the Lakers get a nice piece looking for next season. It's going to be interesting, though, to see what they do about Julius Randle this offseason, see what they do about Lonzo Ball. But the most important thing is the Lakers have the cap space to acquire 2 max contracts. So could LeBron and PG be going there? I don't know. It's tough to say right now, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there, and it'll be interesting to see how they get Isaiah Thomas and Lonzo to fit in. But overall, great move by the Lakers, great move in the front office. I'm excited to see what they do this offseason and the rest of the season. So big things coming out of LA. Great move by the Lakers. So the last 2 winners I want to talk about is I got the Kings down as a winner. Now, a lot of people might not think they're necessarily a winner in this situation, but if you're the Kings, you get rid of George Hill, who I've always said was a terrible signing by them. They don't need him with young De'Aaron Fox, even though Fox is banged up right now, but I still like the move getting him out of there, and he's making $17 million, so it cuts a lot off your payroll. Then they get Joe Johnson. He's going to get bought out and waived, obviously, and you get Shumpert. I mean, Shumpert's got nursing that injury still, so he'll probably sit there on the bench but not really do anything, but I like the move by the Kings. It definitely gives the younger players a chance to step up into more of a role. And the last team I have as a winner is the Heat, and I don't think the Heat are winners because they acquired Luke Babbitt or any other moves they might have made, but I think the Heat are a winner because they get back D-Wade. And when you really think about the Miami Heat franchise, a a lot of people remember that Heat team when they had LeBron, Bosh, and Wade and the Big Three era, but a lot of people also remember Alonzo Mourning and Shaq and D-Wade when they did that together with just them, but I really do think that this is huge for them because D-Wade is probably their second best player or third best player, and he's still got some offensive game. He's shown he can do it in spurts, and I think he's going to help the Heat a lot and win this East race, or not necessarily win the East race because the Heat are pretty far back, but they can definitely get like a 4 or 5 seed, so get them in good seeding position, and it gives them another scoring option and just another good player. I mean, Dwayne Wade's older, so he can teach these older guys how to do it, and the Heat have gone with this platoon way that they've done all season long, and they don't have guys like Dion Waiters anymore. So like I said, I look for the Heat to be a big time buyer at the trade deadline, and they went out and got the player they needed with Dwayne Wade, and I just love seeing him come home, man. It's a great story. Gotta love D Wade in Miami. So moving on from that, I'd like to talk losers now, and me as a big Hawks fan, we're a huge loser here. I mean, we hold Marco Bellinelli out of the game the other night because we're going to trade him, and we got all these assets like Bellinelli and Ilyasova, who are great assets for other teams. Dwayne Dedmon, another great asset, and we don't get or do anything with them. I'm just disappointed. Like, we're trying to tank here. What's the point of us getting Shelvin Mack? I think Shelvin Mack, if anything, gives us a better backup point guard than we already had. So I just don't really think that this is a good move at all by the Hawks, and we should have done more, if anything. I mean, trading Babbitt for Akara White, we get a young player, but that's about it. Shout out to Akara White, though, once again, Noel, but we get another young player, but that's about it. I mean, what are we doing, Hawks? Why didn't we get rid of Bellinelli? I'd rather trade him for a second-round pick than get rid of him for nothing. He's been one of our best players all season. You got to get rid of him to help the tank and to help him out. I mean, Bellinelli could help a lot of teams like the Thunder, and that leads me into my next loser is the Thunder. I felt like the Thunder definitely should have made a move on Avery Bradley, even if it required them giving up a first-round pick or even if it required them giving up something else. I mean, they needed somebody like a Joe Johnson who they should try to get even though they haven't been listed yet as people suiting him. But they needed to just bring in one more veteran player. I think they're really lacking it, and they could have easily done it here at the deadline, but they didn't look to do it, and I'm just disappointed in them. Now, one thing I will say, which hurt this, my final loser, which is the Grizzlies with Tyreke Evans. I just feel like that what I've heard around the league is that teams value their first-round picks so much more than they used to. It has high value. A lot of teams were just getting offered in these trades more so young players and second-round picks, or a combination of both, or just one. So teams not really wanting that for these players. They want those first-round picks, but teams just aren't willing to give them up. We've seen Brooklyn screw themselves with it. We've seen other teams like LA or New York screw themselves with giving up these first-round picks, and teams just aren't really willing to do it anymore. So the Grizzlies get stuck with Tyreke Evans, who they held out of 5 games because they didn't get good enough offers, which I thought was extremely dumb. I don't know how they couldn't have flipped him for anything at all. They're just going to hang on to him, which I'm not a big fan of. Now, my biggest surprise that they didn't get moved is DeAndre Jordan, and I don't have the Clippers on here as a loser at all because I think they did great trades and acquired great players with Avery Bradley and with keeping DeAndre and re-signing Lou Will. I think they made some good moves. I just don't really like them in the West as making the playoffs. It's a tough race out West, lots of good teams. The East is much easier, but you still got DeAndre under contract this season and next season, so you may as well hold on to him and try to get the highest price for him. I mean, if Cleveland actually did offer that Brooklyn pick, I don't know why you wouldn't accept that if you're the Clippers, but hey, they can still trade him for something, so you're not a loser at all, Clippers. You're just a surprise, but overall, I think you're a winner with getting rid of Blake Griffin and getting value for him. And so the last thing I want to touch on for this section is the buyouts. And so Joe Johnson and Derrick Rose are definitely going to get bought out by these teams that just acquired them. I think Joe Johnson will likely get bought out and go to the Warriors or the Celtics, or maybe even Cleveland, or like I said a minute ago, I think the Thunder should try to talk to him and get him. I think he could fit in well on any of these teams. He's an older scorer. His ISO Joe show obviously won't be a thing on these teams, but he can at least come in off the bench and help your second unit a lot. And then Derrick Rose is also very likely to get a buyout. I really don't have a specific landing spot for Derrick Rose, but he's definitely going to get bought out. And I just feel bad for Derrick Rose, man. I feel like he just needs to retire from basketball. This is a guy I watched dominate basketball through till about 2012, and then his knees gave out on him. It just sucks, man, seeing Derrick Rose like this, and he's just a shell of what he used to be. He was always an energy and athletic slasher who gets to the rim on your team. I mean, he was getting 30 points a night by just going to the hole and scoring. He could never really shoot a three-point shot, and his entire game's just kind of hurt him now because it's all based off athleticism, and he's stuck out there shooting. So I just feel bad for you, D-Rose. I know you're going to get bought out, though, and go to a contender, so hopefully you can chase that ring and keep on getting better. Once again, in honor of North Carolina Duke tonight, I just wanted to touch on this last thing on this episode, and that's my top 5 rivalries of all time. So I put a little thought in this list, and I really wanted to leave off just rivalries that are based on players of that era, or like a player versus a player rivalry, and I wanted to make it team rivalries that stick together of all time. So number 5, there's really only one NBA rivalry that's consistently a rivalry, and that's because both these teams have great front offices and they're just very storied programs, so they're always going to spend the big money and do what they need to do in order to get the fans and get the hype, and that's Lakers-Celtics. I mean, that's just always been a very hype matchup. They used to play each other back in the day all the time in the finals, and they had Magic and Bird, and then we saw it again with KG and Kobe, and I just feel like every single time I watch these teams play, they always play at a higher level and they want to win just because, I mean, it's Lakers-Celtics. Like, you got to ball out. So next, coming in at number 4, the NFL is more of a player-based rivalry sport when I think about all the rivalries, but one rivalry that sticks in my mind for all time is always Packers-Bears. Packers-Bears, no matter how bad the teams are, they're always getting the limelight whenever they play each other. That's always a big-time hyped-up matchup, and especially when it has something on the line, it makes it even bigger. These two teams just hate each other, and the Bears almost always try to come to play when they play the Packers, and the Packers do the same as the Bears. Now, this is a matchup, though, that has really been dominated by the Packers just because they always have that consistent quarterback play over the last few years, but the Bears always give it their all, and I'm hoping Trubisky can make them more competitive and make it a better rivalry next season. So number 3, this one's been more on the come up recently, but I got to go Alabama-Auburn, man. I mean, Alabama-Auburn, I just feel like every single year in college football, everybody plans their day around watching this game. This game's always on CBS at 3:30, and it's just always a huge game. I mean, like this past season especially, you had a shot to go to the national championship and the SEC championship on the line, and Auburn got it done. It's just always a great rivalry, especially because these Auburn teams, even if they're not as good, I mean, when they're at Jordan-Hare, Auburn's one of the hardest teams to beat, and of course Bama at home is pretty much impossible to beat. We've seen that over the last couple years, so another great rivalry there. Coming in at number 2 is the game tonight. Personally, my favorite rivalry in sports that doesn't have to do with one of my teams is North Carolina and Duke. And I love this rivalry not only because it's just always a great basketball rivalry because Coach K's always got those boys ready to play, and he always has just a great team. And same thing with Roy Williams, always a great team, always has them ready to play, even though UNC's not having as great of a year this year. But just to make this rivalry sound even better, this is the last 100 meetings. Someone pointed this stat out to me today, and Duke has 50 wins, and UNC has 50 wins, and the point totals is Duke's got 7,767, and UNC is 7,765. So that's pretty much the same team playing each other throughout all the cycles, and it's always a crazy game, man. Like, I remember that Duke team with Austin Rivers, which was the most overrated Duke team I've seen, when they came in and beat them. So, I mean, it's always a good game. Tonight, personally, I got Duke, but I'm excited to see what happens. I think North Carolina will come to play. And at number 1, I got to go with the best rivalry just in sports with the Red Sox-Yankees. I don't care if baseball's not as popular as it used to be or what people say about it, but Red Sox-Yankees always the biggest rivalry. You see some crazy stuff. I remember watching the old pitching coach run at Pedro Martinez and him throw him to the ground when I was like 5 years old in the ALCS, and we saw the Red Sox come back down 3-1, or no, down 3-0. I'll take that back, and win that with the bloody sock from Schilling and all that crazy stuff from that run. So that just gave more fuel to the rivalry, and that is easily the best rivalry in sports. Now, my bonus one that barely missed the countdown is Ohio State, Michigan. That's always a big-time game, always at 12 o'clock on that rivalry Saturday. So it's always a good one. Players are always ready to play, and I love watching it every year. But I can't say that I even watch that game too much just because I got to watch Florida State, Florida, and Georgia Tech, Georgia that same day. But it's definitely a good rivalry, but it's been more dominated by Ohio State lately, so I had to leave it off the list. But once again, guys, thanks for tuning into another episode of Hot Takes with TP3. I had to come live for y'all real quick, let y'all know about everything going on at the NBA trade deadline and what my thoughts are. So I'm really excited to see how this Cavs team plays in the future, and I'm really excited to watch this game tonight. I got this Atlanta special. I decided to bump it back just one more week just because I feel like I'm flooding it too much with 3 podcasts this week. So y'all sit on these 2 and be ready for 2 more next week.
You know I ain't scared to lose you. They don't like it when you're telling the truth. I'd rather be realer than you. I had to make me a cat, now I called a contractor to make me a spot. I sold the dope out your house, now you come to my house, I got